Hello everyone and welcome back. I am Tyler Edlin and this is another episode of the Brush Sauce Theater. I am still in my pajamas, but today we're going to do a material study. Alright, so material studies. These are one of the best kind of academic exercises you can do to improve your painting skills, either traditional or digital. The concept and the techniques applied are fairly the same. So yeah, I don't do these that often. I did a few of them here to kind of warm up. Some of my students need to do them, and we do teach them as part of like a regular exercise in your CGMA. They're just a great way to improve your techniques. So what I first like to do, I make a little sphere, and I do this all in the same PSD, so I keep things simple and very organized. And I try to find that local color. Now, local color is the natural color of an object or a thing in ordinary daylight. Now, this would be uninfluenced by the proximity of other colors and outside influences. So, in this case of this chocolate brownie, it's kind of like that core brown color. Not that it's affected by a warm or a cool light or any kind of shadows and bounce light. Just that base color that kind of sums up that entire object. I don't know how else to put it. I'm sure James Gurney would word it a little bit more elegant than I just did. But either way, I start with my sphere, I fill it with the local color of whatever I'm painting, and then I kind of hack away at some of the edges, as you just seen. I'm trying to get a little bit more form information out of this object. Because what we want to do is we want to take this flat circle and turn it into something recognizable, and something that's recognizable that has form to it, meaning it has more than one side. So the easiest way I can do this and show form is by having two sides, a top or a bottom, a left or a right. As soon as we start doing this, we're heading in the right direction. So I break apart the top surface here as a singular flat color based off the object that you would be painting. You can do this with anything, by the way. I chose this, I think, as a unique kind of object to do. It's got different properties to it, but you can do liquids, you could do skin, you could do different types of rocks and minerals, handmade household objects, whatever you'd like. They all kind of work really good for this, and just do lots of them and try to understand what's happening with what. Like, we could see that there's bounce light coming into the brownie, there's specular lighting kind of hitting the glossiness of that surface coating on the top of it. There's a lot of observations to make, and that's where maybe a more beginner artist would mess up. They would just try to go for one and copy what's in front of them without trying to understand why things are affecting the object the way they are. So again, I'm starting with the major planar surfaces. The forms, to build forms, you have planes, and they make the form. So the top plane, and now we have kind of like a side plane. It's subtly kind of rounded here. I didn't really get into the rendering or shading of that yet, so more or less it's two kind of planes and making a very simple object here. I'm not worried about the texture yet, and I'm not worried about the detailed, and I'm not really too concerned about the lighting. I know there's just a top lighting, and I need to show a little bit of that hitting the top of this object, and when I can do that, I'm just starting to suggest that form. So I'm working again from the bigger shapes down to the smaller shapes. I don't want to get involved noodling out some of the little crevices of this brownie yet. That would probably be a mistake. It's just easier to bake things down in big chunks, big masses, larger masses, and work your way down to the smaller bits. So I took that base color, that local color I started, and I'm trying to make more informed decisions about that at this point. Trying to get a little bit deeper colors, get them a little more rich, a little more vibrant, and I'm trying to, I'm adjusting the color slider. I'm shading it and I'm tinting it. So I'm adding, lights, and I'm adding darks, and I'm adding some saturation. The three kind of properties of color, at least as seen digitally here in my color finder. So I'm just now beginning to add another layer of detail. And that's kind of how I think about these things. It's very simple, very basic, and I go at it in stages or layers. Not necessarily literal layers in Photoshop, but it's like, let's first figure out, layer one. It's that the major surface, the masses, layer 2. Okay, let's correct the color a little bit, break up the surface, chisel that in, to layer 4 or whatever. We're adding details, and the last things I generally do is add the specular type of highlights, and before that I usually handle the bounce shadows. So I put those off. For me, I mean, it comes down to personal decision. There's not a right or wrong way to do this. That's my disclaimer. You can do this any number of ways, but for me personally, and from my experience doing things like exercises like this, it'd be a weird place for me to just jump in and start working that bounce light. I need to work my way down there, and that's kind of how I'm approaching this. For me, it's more or less a systematic way of going through things, and for this object, I started with the top and I'm going down to the bottom. It was just a logical place for me. At least it felt natural. I mean, you could have started from the bottom, but even then I probably wouldn't have started with the bounce light. I'm not going to forget that bounce light, but I don't want to make it my top priority now. I want to get it to read as quickly as possible. And I like to do this, and I carry this through any size project, no matter what type of project, no matter what genre I'm doing. I like to start with the big problems, the major issues, the major shapes, the major colors, and I work my way down the middle. That way, if I'm working on something, if something crashes on my computer, I get pulled away, and I try to save some for later, and for whatever happens, budgeting my time, I can't put as much time back into it as I wanted to. At least I have a lot of it sorted out already, and that will make it a little more cohesive to turn into whoever I have to turn it into. So there's a lot of value and there's a lot of reasons why I'm kind of approaching it the way I am, and hopefully I'm doing an alright job at explaining why I'm doing this. So yeah, it's just now I'm kind of getting in there with a more versatile brush. You just saw me put some brush marks on the canvas. You can go from thick to thin to jittery to smooth, but I'm trying to suggest some more of those little crinkles in this delicious treat here. What am I working on now? I'm trying to work up the edges too. I haven't used any kind of smudge tools or blenders. I'm doing a lot of this kind of manually, and that's fine for this. I'm not looking to get something one for one. This, I guess, academically would reflect something closer to like doing a still life. And what I just showed there with the color on the side, that's me finding my bounce light color. All I did was color picked that kind of clay color, that orange and brown, and I desaturated it. I took that orange out, and when you saw when I put it next to the orange and the brown itself, it looks cooler. But that cool color, if I actually put it next to a cool color, it looks warm. So color temperature, color is interpreted and perceived by our eyes. It's all relative, what it's next to. That's something to keep in mind as well. And so now finally I've used pretty much one or two brushes this entire thing. I didn't want to make this about the brushes. It's because it's not. But if I have a little brush that has some like spattering effects or it speckles it, based off my observation on these highlights here, I think that would be a better choice to go with than kind of like a hard round brush where I'd be stippling it around for 5 minutes. Now I use a shortcut, a digital shortcut at that. I guess if you had an airbrush, you could put your thumb over it and you could spackle it. That's what we used to do back in the early 2000s and the 90s anyway. But so anyways, this topic came from a viewer. If you have any future suggestions on more episodes, feel free to leave it. Now I'm pretty hungry and I need to go put some pants on. Thank you for watching my video. If you found it helpful, please leave me a like. If you want to help me out, please share it with your friends. I'm also on Facebook, where I have a subscribe button where you can get newsletters and discount info. I'm also on Twitter, where I update and post images almost regularly. If you want a chance to mingle and meet other like-minded individuals such as yourself, join the Brush Sauce community. Free and open to anyone, of course through the Google+. And finally, if you'd like to inquire about my mentorship program, head over to tyleredlinart.com, click on the mentorship tab, scroll through, read over some of the guidelines, and feel free to check out several of my testimonial videos on my YouTube channel itself.